Painting like your favorite artist is easy, and I'll be showing you how this is possible by going over how I learned to paint like Yueko, who's one of my all-time favorite artists. From watching her time lapses, studying her art, and trying to recreate two of her artworks, these are the secrets that I learned to hopefully not only allow you to paint more like Yueko, but to also massively improve at art in general. From watching Yueko's time lapses and painting processes, we can see that she doesn't actually start with line art, and instead, she paints big blobs of colors to rough out the character. This technique is great for building in randomness into your artwork, and this is the first of a series of very important concepts to know about Yueko's art. Randomness, in general, is a crucial element behind good paintings. In fact, this is what having a painterly style is all about. But how do we add more randomness into our paintings? Well, beyond it just be more random, there's two major methods to achieving this. One of which is another key technique that Yueko uses, which I'll get to later. And the other one is brushes. So what are the brushes that Yueko used, and what are some good brushes in general? Well, we can break brushes down into two generalized categories. These are fundamental brushes and textured brushes. Fundamental brushes are all the brushes you'd normally use for rendering, such as sketch brushes, hard round brush, soft brush, etc. These brushes don't have texture to them, which makes them very predictable and more controllable. Meanwhile, textured brushes are the type you'd add as a finishing touch, and that typically have a bit of randomness to them. We can see from Yueko's painting process that she utilizes a good balance between fundamental brushes and textured brushes. Incorporating textured brushes into your painting workflow is a key technique for adding more randomness into your paintings and to achieve a more painterly style. It doesn't matter too much what texture you add. Even small random dots or bits of grain can go a long way. For my studies, I used the brushes that I carefully picked and adjusted to replicate the types of brushes that Yueko used. And guess what? I provided all the brushes that I used for free in the description. If you want to use Yueko's personal brushes, they are on her Patreon. And obviously, it's not right for me to distribute those for free. But I hope that the brushes I've provided for free will be a good enough substitute for those who are a little bit broke. But there's another reason for starting the painting off like this. If you look at many popular artists, their style is very often quite loose and rough. This helps make the painting feel more colorful and dynamic. So how does Yueko's technique for starting paintings help with this? Well, by painting blobs of colors instead of well-defined lines, we don't trap ourselves within the boundaries of these lines, and instead are encouraged to go outside the box and add more randomness to our painting. Then we can shape and refine this like a sculpture in order to refine it into what we want. Now, one thing that has always perplexed me about Yueko's artwork is how is it so beautiful and detailed? Well, after analyzing some of Yueko's artworks, it's clear that one of the key features of Yueko's art style is her use of big, blocky shapes and colors, which sounds super counterintuitive. How is her artwork so detailed then? Well, there's some techniques that she uses, but firstly, why use big, blocky shapes and colors if you want your artwork to look detailed? How does that even work? Well, detail is defined as an isolated element within a work of art. That's exactly what these shapes are. In art, we can have a spectrum of edges, but in general, we only really have hard edges or soft edges. Having soft edges will make the painting look softer and more blended. No surprises there. But it can easily make the painting look muddy. That's why, if we want to add detail, it's better to have hard edges. This style of using big shapes is, in my opinion, one of the most important and defining parts of Yueko's style, which is why I'll be focusing on that throughout my studies. Funnily enough, I originally actually painted and studied these two paintings by Yueko for my hard brush only video. I think this says a lot about Yueko's art style. This is why I highly recommend trying to train yourself to be more comfortable with using only hard brushes. This is a very important skill to learn if you want to paint more like Yueko or just to paint better in general. Now, here's the technique I mentioned at the start of the video, which is another very important and advanced aspect of Yueko's style. If we look closely at Yueko's paintings, you can see that she's using a technique of layering brushstrokes on top of each other using a low opacity. This technique is great for adding more randomness into your paintings. This is because these stroke overlaps will naturally create very nice pattern variations, color variations, and value variations. It's literally perfect. So this is a technique that I highly recommend that you guys try out as well. But it's not enough to just analyze an artist's style and try to replicate some elements of it. You also need to build a strong foundation in art, which you can learn from Skillshare, who've kindly sponsored this video. I'm sure you've already heard of Skillshare by now, but I'll show you a hidden gem on there. Firstly, for those who don't know, Skillshare is a huge online learning platform filled with countless classes about everything from digital art to productivity to starting your own business. For example, anatomy is an area that I struggle with and that I am working on. And there's a great class by Robert Marzullo here that teaches all you need to know about the basics of anatomy. And guess what? The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1 month of free trial of Skillshare. So why not give it a try? Anyways, now it's time for me to apply all this knowledge to my 2 studies, where I learned some more important lessons. When I saw this painting, I felt that this is the epitome of the painterly style. And following my advice from before, I'll be doing this with only hard brushes. Or at least, that was the plan. Starting off, I did rough lines to give me some base structure. But even though I wasn't confident enough to start from the base color for this, I still tried to follow Yueko's style and used only very rough guiding lines for the line art. This way, like I mentioned, I wouldn't be trapped within the boundaries of the lines. For the colors and rendering, I painted big shapes for the colors, just like Yueko. I thought in terms of shapes and forms, and really tried to be loose and free with the shapes I painted. One important lesson I learned from this study is the importance of texture. These textured brushes really make a big difference in the overall feel of the painting, and helps prevent it from looking too simplistic when we are using these solid colors. And here's the finished painting. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, because I feel like I managed to capture the overall chaotic style of the painting. I came across this piece so long ago. It must have been sitting in my saved Pinterest for years, dating all the way back to when I first started art. So it really feels a little surreal and like a milestone that I'm now studying this piece. So I tried doing the same thing as Yueko to start with, and I reverted back to a more normal workflow, but I'm still focusing on improving my confidence with hard brushes by only painting big shapes with solid colors. As I was painting, I kept referring to the video in order to follow what Yueko was doing. I feel like this is a really important thing to do if you want to study how to paint like a certain artist. I wasn't able to for the previous painting because she didn't upload a speed paint. Painting the background was very satisfying to do. I referred back to the video and tried to follow the chaoticness of how Yueko did her backgrounds, and basically made as many big brush strokes as I could. For the background, I customized the hard round and the rectangle brush to make it very sensitive to pressure opacity. Funnily enough, this is exactly what Yueko also did to make one of her brushes. I could basically get all the sizes of the strokes I needed just by varying my pressure. This was good training to improve my brush control, which is quite an important skill. So I highly recommend doing this as well. And once again, I've provided these brushes in the description for free, so you can try this as well. One main thing I learned from this painting is that it's easy to overdo the randomness of the painting, which can just result in it looking messy instead. So I had to tone down the randomness at some points. I think the fact that I did this for my hard brush only challenge really shows. At this stage, it was mostly just a pretty tedious process of rendering using hard brush strokes. I also added some noise texture to the background, and I tried to add some small details and just more texture in general. And I think this turned out alright. It looks quite different from the reference still, but I wasn't aiming for a one-to-one replica. Instead, I was aiming to capture the main techniques and essence behind Yueko's artworks. Overall, I learned a lot from these studies, and I hope you enjoyed following along with me on my art journey. I've got a lot of big videos planned, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. And don't forget to leave a like if you like this video. Anyways, thanks for watching.